I'm Angela Morabito, and you're watching Five Big Questions. Today, Congressman Tim Walberg is here to share his thoughts on higher education. Congressman Walberg sits on the House Education and Labor Committee, and he hails from Michigan's 7th District. Congressman, thank you very much for joining me today.
Angela, good to be with you.
Thank you. So you and your colleagues on the House Ed and Labor Committee, you just celebrated last month, actually, National Apprenticeship Week. And apprenticeships, as you know, have been on the rise in this country, but they're often kind of an afterthought. They haven't always been, the most traditional path or the first thought of path to get students into the workforce. What do you make of this?
Well, Angela, we've had so many years of pretty much total control by higher education. And I think we've seen some, amazing results come in our educational endeavors as a result of our colleges and universities when they stick to what they're supposed to be doing. And that's training people for real world employment, jobs, expansion of ideas, research, development, all of that. But you use the term traditional in your opening to the question, and tradition goes back to the fact we had apprenticeships. We had people who mentored people in a trade, something that made a difference in their lives for the future and carried on, whether it was in agriculture. Really, the children raised on a farm homestead were being mentored and apprenticed in agriculture, and they were productive for the family as it moved forward. We had people like my great-grandfather, who was a stonemason in the old country in Sweden. He started out in an apprenticeship program. Another grandfather who was a blacksmith, again, learned at the forge with a blacksmith who trained him for something that was productive and required significant training in order to do the work that was necessary for a community, whether it was putting horseshoes on or whether it was building equipment for the kitchen. All of that came as a result of apprenticeships that really pointed people toward real world. Now here we come almost full circle. I mean, if you're going to be an English teacher, or you're going to be a chemist, or you're going to go into IT, sure, you will go through a formal training program in higher education. But we're finding now, and in my own experience with a local college in Michigan, has developed for the most part, a relationship with Google that is having Google set in place the courses necessary for people to work in the IT field and not be just trained in IT in the traditional sense of what has been going on for too long in higher education, but what they need to have people that they don't have to retrain when they come out of higher education and come to Google or Facebook or wherever they might go. And so it's almost an apprenticeship program that's being developed by the industry themselves and then put in place for the professors at the local colleges to mentor and really apprentice students for the real world experience. So apprenticeships, I think, are now going to be something that higher ed may fight back against because of a turf mentality. But I believe apprenticeships that are not necessarily 4 years, but maybe 2 years, 1 year's credentialing, certifications, stackable certifications, all of that can take place. And we can talk to our young people and say, you know what? No longer is it college prep courses, it's life prep. And that may take place at a local community college, or it may take place at in a local business that will apprentice you and say to you, if you need higher education beyond this, we'll take care of that for you. But for now, we need you in the workplace, and we will provide you an education that leads to world jobs and a profession for the rest of your life if necessary.
Those corporate partnerships with colleges and universities can yield amazing results. I saw it when I worked in the Department of Education under President Trump, that those partnerships can do really great things for students. But of course, not all students are going to go that route. And when we think about four-year colleges, there's some remarkable data out there that says only 1 in 20 American adults say that colleges do a very good job of preparing students for the workforce. So beyond apprenticeships, what would you say needs to happen to make college education more relevant to the skills students actually need?
Well, I think we have to put more competition in place. And what we've seen in higher education is the fact that when we give more money toward it, whether it's the Pell Grant system or you name it, or now when this administration is talking about a free 2-year college education for everybody, including millionaires' kids, that's absurd. All that does is give these universities and college automatic dollars to come in. They don't have to compete. They know that it's there, and nobody can take away the students from them because they're all designed to go that direction. I think as we need in our pre-K on up to our K-12 schools, we need choice. And the only way you have choice is you give the opportunity for people to make those choices at to any system that's there, and let the higher education institutions then compete by showing a better program that makes real sense and common sense to people about the future that they're going to gain from the education. And yeah, we have so many students that go, right now we're thinking of University of Michigan having a wonderful opportunity for a national championship as football level. And so the student going there, go blue, and you wear the colors and you go to the game. But in the end, you come out as an alumni, but you have real world experience and training that will take you into field that you prepared for. And that's not necessarily true. And I think as we get that out to parents and students alike, and we get away from the concept that parents often have that if my Johnny or Billy or Susie doesn't go to such and such a school like Nancy and Fred and Larry down the street, I've failed as a parent. No, find what your student values, find what their characteristics are, what their aptitude is for, and then point them in that direction. That's where we need a whole cornucopia of opportunities. Higher ed, 4-year institutions, graduate schools, great. But then the apprenticeship programs, the mentoring programs, the on-the-job training experiences. And I think the dollars ought to flow to all of that as opposed to just one set group of educational institutions.
Having the money follow the student is a big deal, and it's something that the left and teachers unions have fought hard against. But I'd like to cover something the teachers unions and the left are fighting pretty hard for, which is critical race theory. And as you know, in your home state of Michigan, you have the teachers union saying there's no CRT taught here. And then video just comes out of the Detroit superintendent saying that CRT is, thoroughly woven into the curriculum. Who do you think is telling the truth?
Well, certainly not the academics. I guess I appreciate the Detroit superintendent at least coming out honestly and openly and saying, yeah, we're using it everywhere. We're using it in every classroom, and we plan to continue doing that. They have to have this experience where we tell them about all of the dirty laundry of the United States history. Well, I think history ought to tell the truth, but I think history ought to be broad, and it shouldn't gear on the fact that just because you are a particular race or gender, that you don't have a chance for the future to go up to whatever you would like to be, because that's who you are. And you're caught in a country that looks at your skin color, for instance, and makes the choice for you. That's not America, and that's not a true story. And so there are reasons why parents are going to school board meetings, not just in Detroit, but there are parents that are going to school board meetings in my district who are frustrated with what's being taught. They don't mind the truth being taught. They don't mind the negative parts of our history as well as the positives being taught, but teach history. But more than importantly, teach every child that it doesn't make a difference in America. It may make a difference in Afghanistan. We're seeing that. It may make a difference in Iraq. It may make a difference in other parts of the world, who you are. But in America, we were founded on the basic belief that all men and women are created equal and are endowed with certain inalienable rights, God-given rights, and those being the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And let's major on that, and don't major on the foibles that went on and we've grown from, because we're still perfecting our union. And so I think parents, as we saw in Virginia, for instance, in the gubernatorial race, reacted to that educationist institutional system that began to say, parents, you don't count. We're going to impart to your kids what we want to do, and you stay out of the way. And they said no. And I think that's taking place all over. And so as we push back, whether it's in the military or whether it's in our local K-12 systems, that isn't acceptable. Don't brainwash our kids to the negative. If you want to brainwash them to the positive, to the optimistic, to the fact that we are people growing and we've come an awful long way and we are a benefit to the rest of the world because we've learned from our mistakes. We fixed a lot of them and we'll fix more in the future. But young person, you have the opportunity. Grab hold of it, move forward, realize that you are God created, you're his image bearer, and you have the opportunity to do anything that you're willing to work for in this great country.
It's a wonderful message that gets lost in so many classrooms. And I think that's, as you mentioned, part of the reason why parents are stepping up and demanding school choice. Now, people have always had a choice, generally, in where they want to go to college. Why is it such a fight at the K through 12 level? Well, we know it's the teachers' unions, but what is the magic of school choice that would make education better for everyone?
Again, competition. If you can't control the turf and force everybody to stay in your turf, then you're going to have to find a way to compete. We saw that in Michigan when we finally, and this was toward my end of terms in the state legislature, we put in place school choice. And you could have schools of choice where public schools were competing against each other for students. And so they had to beef up their curriculum, their opportunities, their academics, et cetera. And parents that were frustrated for whatever reason. And it could be a very justified reason, or it could be just simple misunderstanding of what was going on. They could choose a school. And I remember one of our esteemed private institutions in my district at the time coming to me and saying, do you want to go this direction? We're going to lose students here at our local private school that has had a real market in bringing students in because of the curriculum, the opportunity, the sports programs, the facilities. And now we're seeing with schools of choice, some of those students may go away because their parents can say, I can get equal education at a public school across the county. And I said, listen, you've had it wonderful right now because you've had a good program, but now you're going to have to compete too. And we saw that take place where public schools and private schools competing on a level playing field for the first time for students, and parents making a decision based upon dollars and cents as well as academics had a choice. And I think we need to expand that. And what I think for the most part, we have to expand it to the point that the dollars will follow the students wherever they go. Because if we want to educate kids, isn't that the important purpose that we have? And if a public school can do it in a particular community, God bless them. If a private school steps up and is able to provide something additional and the dollars flow there, God bless them. And the student is the product that we want to come out with. And I love teachers. I was raised by a family of public school teachers. I have a daughter-in-law that was a public school teacher. My wife taught in the public schools as a substitute teacher. I'm not opposed to that. I'm a product of that. But I know that I, as a parent, and my wife and I had a choice for our kids of public, private, and homeschool. And our kids were different in every way. And we were able to choose for them what would work best for them. And they all turned out well. And did not lose anything in the translation of having those choices. But other people don't have the same opportunities that I have financially, for instance. And they ought to have that choice. That kid in Detroit ought to have a choice of a positive public education and ought to have a choice of a positive private education if that's what is best for them.
It is such an individual need, the way that different people learn and the way that, fits best for each unique student. But I want to go beyond choice a little bit here and talk about people who are living with the consequences of where they went to college and what they chose to study. I mean, of course, student debt. And one of your colleagues in Congress, AOC, just said that she thinks it's ridiculous that she still has student loan debt. She thinks student loan debt should be wiped out. And I want to ask you, as someone who, works in the same quote unquote office, let's call it, do you want to pay AOC student loan debt?
Absolutely not. She made a choice, as did everybody who went to school. And they may have been given bad advice, and they took on debt that they shouldn't have taken on. And then they find out they finished their college education and the courses they took will not pay off their student loan debt. That's not my fault or my responsibility. I know my kids paid for their college education. I said, I got you through 12 years. Now, what doesn't cost you anything isn't considered all that high of importance. I want you to know the cost. They paid for it. I don't think they necessarily want to pay for other people's education if they made wrong decisions or right decisions. I think, again, we go back to the idea. If we're going to do that, we put no burden on academic institutions to achieve to a point that people seek after their educational experience. They don't have to compete, and so they can do whatever they want. And that doesn't bode well for the future. I think, again, going back to apprenticeships, certification opportunities, that's going to provide wonderful, wonderful life experiences and training and job opportunities for students. And as you expand on that, people will make those decisions. I may not be able to pay for 4 years at this time. So I'm going to go through an apprenticeship route, get a job, and then maybe the company I'm working for will pay my way for additional training for the future, additional education opportunities. And I can get my college education and not come out with huge debt. And oh, by the way, we'll say to those universities, you can't count on anybody paying off that student loan debt. So you better start thinking about what your tuition is costing, how many provosts you have on your team, how many teaching assistants you have that take the place of professors that ought to be in the classroom teaching, as opposed to simply doing research and benefiting from the largesse of the government and the individuals that are paying your way and not getting your services. So all of that goes back to saying, let's count the cost and make sure everybody considers that cost. And ultimately, in the end, the student comes out with a life skill that makes them useful and they can put back into our economy, as opposed to having a debt that will frustrate their ability to achieve success in the world that they supposedly train for.
There's tons of opportunity out there for students, but also tons of room for improvement for fixing the system as a whole, so that more students can have more chances to succeed. Congressman Tim Walberg, what a wonderful message. Thank you for answering 5 big questions.
And Angela, thank you. Thank you for the questions and thank you for the subject. And may, as a result of some of these conversations, we start to wake up to the fact that America still has no competitor if we get out of our own way and let the free enterprise, free choice system work. And then let us, in the facilities that are there, compete in such a way that we expand our capabilities and provide better opportunities and programs and processes for our students.
It's all about putting those free market principles to work. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I'm grateful for your work and helping us get there.
Thank you.